So good afternoon again. This is Elsie Arnson, State Superintendent, and I'm in State Superintendent of Public Education. I am excited that I get to have a relationship with those that serve all of our students, not just those that are in public school. So the federal government has granted us some very precious congressional dollars. They're all of our tax dollars. So let's put them to good use. So with that, I'm Elsie. I'd like to introduce then the members of the OPI that will be helping, helping bridge the discussion with the federal government, the state government, as well as with you. So with that, I have our CFO, Ken Bailey. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Ken Bailey, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer at the Office of Public Instruction. And I'll spend a little bit of time today, and we'll also hand it over then talking about this program. And we'll also be turning it over then to Jay Phillips, who is actually managing the grant software that is to be used for this project. So Jay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Jay Phillips. I'm the Centralized Services Administrator here at OPI. And as Kenneth stated, it's going to be my staff that has designed the application for all the schools here today to apply for the EANS funds, and then also to work with getting services and as well as getting reimbursed for certain expenses you guys have incurred. And so very happy to open up the relationship with the new schools, and we're looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, Jay and Ken. So in statute, school in Montana can be public school, can be homeschool, and that's the majority of what we have. We have about 115 that are school entities themselves, but we have the majority of them are homeschools. So with that, let's go ahead, Ken, and if you could just discuss what really is this program that the congressional dollars have been given to us.
I'll be glad to. So there have been three stages of funding that has come from Congress for K-12 education. The first one, the CARES Act, provided funds to private schools and homeschools through the equitable share process, similar to Title I. But with the, I think it's called the CARISA Act that was signed at the end of December, the funding allocation to K-12 public schools actually said there won't be any equitable share, and instead money was appropriated for direct distribution to private schools called the Emergency Assistance for Non-Public Schools. So that's where the initials EANS, EANS, comes from. The third level is the act that was just passed that's called ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act. And similar to the CARISA Act, that also has money that's appropriated for the EANS program. We're actually still a little confused because in the CARISA Act, which we're going to talk about the application for those funds today, a total of $2.5 billion was appropriated for the United States, and Montana received $12.8 million. So we have $12.8 million that under the EANS program, instead of going through public schools, the money will be distributed directly from the OPI to private schools. And of course, for Montana, that means home schools as well. We're a little confused because in the most recent ARPA Act, it was the same amount of money was appropriated for the country. But estimates that came out of Congress said that Montana will only receive about $7 million instead of that 12.8. And we haven't actually seen an allocation table from the Department of Education. So we're still trying to figure out exactly how much Montana will get. But again, that's a second wave of EANS money. Today, we're going to talk about the process for the first wave, the $12.8 million, and what we're doing with it. So, and I'll mention in here that in the Act, that the EANS money is appropriated. And the department has sent out some guidance in terms of how this EANS program will work. And it's pretty interesting, I think, because as probably you all know, in the equitable share program for that normally would come with Title I and also happened with the CARES Act, money can't be given directly to a private school, and instead the public schools would arrange to purchase services or goods for the private school. This act allows for direct payments to private schools or homeschools. It's for reimbursement, and I think the reason it was done that way is the funding allows for expenditures that happened from when the COVID pandemic crisis was first declared, which was March 13th of last year. And expenditures after that date qualify. So if in filing for money, you actually have an expenditure that was made and you want to get reimbursed for that expenditure, we will be allowed to pay directly to you. But there are some restrictions. There's some particular types of expenditures that it can't be done that way. And again, we're allowed to either reimburse or to actually arrange for goods or services. Similar to equitable share for the CARES Act, money has to be spent on expenditures that are related to preparing, preventing, or responding to the coronavirus. So it has to be COVID-19 related. And money cannot be spent for any religious type of service or goods, etc. But other than that, obviously money available and can be used for a wide variety of purposes.
So Ken, let's stop right there and see if there's any questions with what was just shared, either on the amount of money or possibly the uses of them or the reimbursement coming from March of 2020.
I have a question. This is Ginger Lynch. I'm in Livingston, Montana. And my question is, obviously, to facilitate, before COVID happened, we weren't a homeschool, but COVID, we ended up being a homeschool. In fact, the entire 8th grade where my daughter had originally gone to school, which is a rural Montana school, didn't come back after that. So we're homeschooling. And of course, we had to purchase equipment, a computer, and then also I'm paying for extra curriculum, particularly in areas where I feel like I really am not qualified. I'm not good enough, for instance, at the math at 8th grade level to really instruct her. So we're paying for services and things like that to facilitate the education. Are those kinds of expenses the type of expenses that can be reimbursed? And the other thing is that we added, because she was taking music 6th, 7th grade, and then because of 8th grade, she had to drop music. We're also paying a third party for the music part so that she didn't have to drop that. Are those kind of expenses covered?
Thank you for that question, because I'll answer it, but it also raises a very difficult subject that I was actually going to turn to next. So in terms of paying for curriculum or other types of things, again, I think the main thing is that they're in the guidance that the department has published and that we have put on our website. There are allowable uses that are listed. And there's also the need for it to be related to the coronavirus. So on all of these questions of, is this the kind of thing we can pay for? Part of the justification will be saying, how is this related to the coronavirus? And so long as you can find that, that connection, and in the allowable uses that are published, you can find a category that this would fit into, then it's an allowable expense. And I can certainly see a case of what you're describing as a curriculum expense as being so. However, the difficult subject is that the department's guidance says that the funds are available to private schools that were in existence at the time that the coronavirus was declared. So if your children left school after March 13th of last year, and that's when you established yourself as a homeschool parent, again, I'll go back and check this to make sure with the department to make sure we don't keep money from anybody. But you may not be eligible for receiving the funds.
Thank you, Ken. And our process with that would be a waiver to ask the federal government, and it's not just our state that has this predicament of when this started, but I believe, our discussion is to help you, is to be that intermediary with the federal government. So any questions that might come up that might seem of a hurdle of giving you those dollars so that we can help you as parents and as schools to make sure that learning has continued, because there was definitely a disruption. Any other further questions you might have of Ken? And we'll have more.
Melissa Webb has her hand raised, so Melissa,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I guess just for a little bit more clarification there, we had a kindergartner when we started the pandemic that obviously we were not a homeschool before the pandemic hit, but we are absolutely planning to continue homeschooling.
So we lost you there, Melissa.
If I could understand, Ken, maybe what she is saying is that if one child in the family started and then there were others that continued on in the fall, which child might be able to receive these precious dollars?
Right, and again, that kind of specific question of, hey, the department guidance is really intended for private schools, because we're only one of a handful of states that include homeschools in our private schools in Montana. So this isn't something the department anticipated. So this is the kind of question that I would have to go back to them on and get clarification. So I've noted that as a question that I'll try and get answered as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
And
I have a question. This is Erin Lipkind, Missoula County Superintendent of Schools. My question is, do these homeschools and private schools need to demonstrate to the state that they were lawfully enrolled in homeschool, or that their private school, was actually operating prior to the pandemic? Is there going to be a mechanism for them to demonstrate this?
So it is one of the questions that will be on the application. And so I haven't thought about whether we'd actually ask for any kind of demonstration beyond that. So again, we're asking people to tell the truth on the application.
Yeah, so there is just in there, there's a statement that you're kind of asserting that you meet one of the requirements, and that is one of them, that as you sign the application, you're saying that you were a homeschool or private school established prior to that date.
thank you. Beth, you have your hand up.
Thank you. So I have two questions. First off, going back to what they were asking, if we have a photocopy of our notification that we sent to our superintendent, would that count towards like the qualification of being established before the pandemic? And secondly, do we need to provide receipts for the curriculum that we purchased, or any of the electronics that we were sort of forced to purchase so our children could participate in regular activities?
Thank you, Beth. That the first question of the notification, does that give evidence that you were in existence? Most certainly it does. And on the second question, yes, we will need receipts. If you come to us and say, I've lost the receipt, then we would go through a process of establishing somehow that what the cost of the item is, and some proof that you did pay for it. We would work with you on that if you've lost a receipt.
Can I have one more question? So you said it can't go for religious goods. So it can't go towards like an ABECA curriculum or a Catholic curriculum. It has to be completely secular curriculum. Or if we used ABECA last year, we bought ABECA this year, how does that work? Or is that too complicated for today?
Yeah, these are good detailed questions. Again, my understanding of this is that you cannot pay for a purely religious curriculum. I know this has come up in the past, though, of in a religious curriculum, there will be some sections that are not religious at all. And we would try and work with you to be fair about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions at this point?
This is Erin Lipkind. I have another question. Is this money going to be allocated like on a per student basis? So each homeschool student gets an equitable amount of money, or each private school student? Or is it going to be based on the receipts only that are submitted? And one person may have purchased a computer, but another person couldn't afford to do that, for example, not knowing that this funding was going to come later.
So Erin, if you don't mind holding that question, that's the next topic that I was going to turn to. Any other questions before I go forward? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and go through some things on our website, and just again to make sure that everyone knows where it's at and what they can do with it. So let me. Can everyone see that? It should show our main page with Superintendent Arnson smiling at us all. And on here, you can see there's a big red button that says get info on home and private school COVID funding. And that's simply what you need to do to find all this information. And, you know, I'll scroll down as we go, but I want to start by looking at this section that says private schools and home schools. And it shows the total enrollment, 7,600 in private schools, 9,875. And these were the home schools that were in existence on March 13th.
And let me stop you just for a minute. Does everyone see the screen? I think something came up in the chat box that there was a challenge and couldn't see the screen. Sarah, you had said it was a black screen. Hopefully you got it at this point. Does everybody see it? If we could just see a thumbs up out there. I think we're good then. Sarah, I hope you got it. Excellent. Thank you so much. Excellent. Sorry, Ken, please continue.
That's quite all right. So the question is, so how, that was asked by Erin, is so how can we equitably distribute this money to the home schools and private schools? And again, the guidance that came from the department is that we should give priority to low-income children and those schools, which for us mean home schools, that were most impacted by COVID. So we've really given some thought to this, how can we do it? And we've looked at what some other states are doing as well for this same program. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a two-tiered program where there's a flat amount that is given to every child that's enrolled, right? So based on total enrollment. And then there'll be a second award for every low-income kid that's in a particular institution or homeschool. And we came up with a formula that we think makes sense. And again, if we based it on if everybody participates. So if everybody that we know that we think is in a private school or homeschool participated, what we worked out is that we would assign $550 for every kid, and then $1,100 additional for every low-income kid, okay, as a way of giving that priority. And we base that on an estimate of how many low-income kids that we have from the Title I area. But we expect that we will not see 100% participation. We haven't in any of the equitable share efforts that we've done, et cetera. So we will put this into place, and we'll talk about timing in a second, but we will close the application window on June 1st. And on June 1st, we'll be able to see how many participants we have. And we think that there'll be fewer participants, so there'll be more money available. So we will adjust the awards at that time to make sure that we distribute all of the money that has come to Montana. We couldn't think of any way to do that until we know exactly how many participants we're going to have. Now, a good question would be, so how do you determine if kids in a private school or in a home school are low-income kids or not? And again, here with some consultation with the Title I people, we've come up with what we think is the fairest thing that we can do. And that is that as a base case, we're going to use the percent poverty that is in the public school district that you're in. And these are statistics that we have gathered from the Department of Commerce, I think it is, perhaps Department of Labor. And so when you fill out your application, you'll be asked to fill in what school district are you in. And from that, we will take the number of kids and multiply by that poverty rate. And that will be, and even if it's a fraction of a kid, that is what will be assigned to you. However, we realize that that may not be equitable, right? That a particular private school or a home school may qualify as a low income for all the kids who were there, or a bigger proportion than what the poverty rate is. So everyone will have the option to provide support for the low income count that's different than if we just use the base. So for example, and we will publish this, there are actually 5 different measures of poverty that the Department of Education has said we can use. The most common thing, and that you may have seen in the equitable share dealings with the local school districts, is that if you fill out one of the free and reduced lunch applications, and it meets that criteria, we consider that evidence of low income. And so, for example, if a private school has those forms for all of their kids, and in the poverty rate in the district is 30%, but 75% of their kids qualify, we will award the low income portion to all those 75% of the kids. So, we start with that allocation basis because we've seen in the past that it's a sensitive subject to come and say, could you give us evidence of whether you're low income or not? And so no one will have to do that. The default will be to use what the poverty rate is in the district that you're located in. But if you want to come forward and say, provide evidence that would give you a greater share of low income, you will be able to do that. So let me pause there. I've said a couple things about how we're going to allocate the money and this stuff about low income. And let me ask if there are any questions or comments on that.
So Ken, there's quite a few in the chat box. So
Yeah.
if we could just go down to that. In other words, there was one about some dates. And I know that you had said early summer. If you could just be a little bit more, just reiterate about the dates, I think that will help. And then we'll just continue down the chat box and see if there's any other questions that we have. Thank you, Ken.
Sure. And let me get to the chat box. So, and I was going to leave this up to Jay to cover, but I'll do it real quickly. By the statute, we were asked to make the application available 30 days after we received notice of the grant to Montana. And that 30-day limit was yesterday. And so as of yesterday, we have the application up and available for people to look at and start filling out. There's also then that we think will be 30 days from now that we'll actually start, quote, submitting the applications, where we'll have everything all worked out on how to allocate and that kind of stuff. And then that application window, sorry, from that date of submitting the application, again, by law, we're required to approve or deny within 30 days, and we will start doing that. We will close that window for applications on June 1st, and we have to do that as far as closing it, because there's another requirement that we obligate all the funds. In other words, we award all the funds by August 23rd of this year. And any funds that we haven't awarded, it goes back to the governor's office to spend on something else. So by closing it on June 1st, it gives us time to approve everything. And if you end up saying that we have extra money available, to reallocate it. So that timing is all aimed at making sure that we will be able to distribute all of the money to private schools in Montana. Okay.
Any questions on those dates? Thank you, Ken. Let's work our way down.
Okay, I'm scrolling back up. Gosh, there's a lot of these, aren't there?
Yeah, and Ken, I tried to answer some of the ones in regards to what's the kind of the period availability of the funds. So I did answer those in the chat.
So on the basic allocation, Ken, we have each child that is in private school or homeschool will receive $550
at a minimum.
at a minimum, each child, regardless of income. And then at a low income, they would receive what then, Ken?
$1,100 in addition to the $550.
In addition to it. Questions on those?
Yeah, Elsie, I'd like to ask a question. This is Steve White. The numbers that you're talking about, the 550 and the 1,100, is that still have to be is that a reimbursable amount, or is that just the 550 no matter what? And then there's reimbursable amounts above that. So I'm kind of confused. Is the 550, is that the greatest amount that somebody could get, but at the same time to get that, they have to show receipts and things like that?
So the amount that we're talking about is the total amount that's available. So yes, for every kid, it's $500. And in terms of how that money will be used, to the extent that there are receipts that you have that you want to be reimbursed for, we can send the money directly to you. However, what we'll also be able to do is to, if you have something that you want to buy or a service that you need, we can pay for it directly for you. Okay, so it'll getting those goods and services to you can be done in both of those ways.
So
And
if
as I
someone
said,
only,
on the
okay.
frequently asked questions piece, there are actually some expenditures that we're not allowed to do reimbursement on. Okay.
So if someone comes up with receipts for say $200 worth of materials, goods or services or whatever, there would be a $200 reimbursement, not the $550 then. And then, and if they have some books, like there was some mention of some different curriculum, that is there some sort of process that you're going to have that, I guess, is it in the application that they're going to have to define that it's non-religious, and because there are some that are going to be religious books, but that are part of a component of the homeschool, but you know, a math book probably is not. And so it's, and then at the same time, it's all, everything is for homeschoolers that were homeschooling before March 13th, 2020.
Right.
Okay.
So for the example you gave, if someone has $200 worth of receipts, we will actually look at those receipts. And if we see something that we think is religious in nature, we would call you and talk to you about it. After we've done the reimbursement of the $200, we would work with you to say, what do you want to do with the other $350, right? Yeah. And you know, again, could be buying materials for you, et cetera. That's the way that the grant will work.
Great, thank you.
So one of the questions Ken said, is the money available for the 21-22 school year, for the coming school year?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be also used again for expenditures that have already happened this year. After we award the money to you and work with you on how you want to spend it, the time period of this grant goes through September of 2023. So again, there's no rush to spend the money in this time frame that we're talking about. It actually goes out that far. And the next grant, the EANS 2 one that I talked about that's coming, that grant actually extends for another year. So again, there's going to be lots of time looking forward for you to be able to use this money.
And then just to reiterate that each child receives $550. And then if you are a low income with a threshold, you then have an additional $1,100 for that. So just want to reiterate, that was in the chat box, just want to reiterate, and we'll put this on our website as well. Let's see what else we've had. A question was, would remote learners qualify for any of this funding?
So if you have a child who is a remote learner and they're enrolled in a public school district, then no, they would not be eligible for this funding. If you're a private school and you have remote learners that are enrolled in your private school, those kids are eligible.
Thank you, Ken. Another question was, are there formulas on the application?
No, there's no formula on the application.
What we're trying to do is to make this as easy as possible, and also make it so that if you have any questions, we're going to be here to help you cross that finish line so that you can use the dollars to help encourage learning. So has the application for the EANS or for these federal dollars, has it been created yet?
Yes, it has. And again, as soon as we get done here, we're going to turn to Jay, who's going to show a little bit of this, of how to get into the application.
Another one was, could these funds be used to supplement increased staffing needs if related to COVID? For example, my school has needed to hire 2 new part-time staff members this year in order to meet our staffing needs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an expenditure. We would have to work with you on exactly how to do that. But yes, that's an allowable expenditure.
Another one that's aligned to this said, would it be possible to provide more scholarships with these dollars to students at our schools, as many have held their family finances that have been impacted by COVID?
Providing scholarships. So I believe so. That's a little tougher one because again, what you're saying is that you need more scholarships because of COVID, and to the extent that you can, make that connection, then I believe yes, that's an allowable expenditure.
Thank you. Another one has to do with recording of this. So it'll be available on our website. And just as we in education, you never close a school day, regardless of where you're learning, without opening up another one. So we'll have another call and others hopefully will be on here, or if there are other questions. And we'll do this again next week at this time on Thursday. So we'll post that as well before we leave today's. Here's another one. Will everyone who applies get $550 per child? And can we purchase items now like computers, since we are borrowing right now?
Yes. That's a simple answer. Yes to both those questions.
Okay. Another one says, I don't see the application on our site. Can you please direct us to it? And Jay, I know we're going to go through that in just a few minutes with the application. So we'll get to that in just a second. Thank you for your patience. Yep, another one was on the application. Thank you, Dr. Ewell. Do you need an e-grant account to access the application? And an e-grant is how we in government have that relationship with our schools, our public schools. So Jay, do we need an e-grant account?
Yes, and I'll cover that, Elsie, when we go through the,
Okay.
we'll get into the application and everything.
Great. It says this year I'm homeschooling 4 of my children, but next year I'll also have my youngest in kindergarten. Will that count for 4 or 5 of my children?
The allocation of money will be based upon the number of children you have at the time that the application is filled out. So no, you would not. Now, we haven't set up the timing for the second EANS application yet, but that's a possibility.
Okay, so for clarification on that, the Office of Public Instruction has received 2 of these grants. So what Ken just said, the first one may not be able to be there, but when the second one comes around, that question would probably be a yes for that additional child. So here's one. How do homeschools prove low income status? Does their HMK medical card count?
So again, there's actually a publication that we have that takes what's in statute by the Department of Education for possible ways to state that kids are low income or not. And we'll provide that guidance to you. The most common way that we've seen is in filling out a free and reduced lunch application. And we'll make available on our site also.
And again, if there's any questions on that, we have experts here to help to answer that question. Another one is these funds are reimbursable for materials, not for proactive funds.
No, that's not correct. Reimbursement is one of the ways that you can, get these funds if you've already purchased something. Looking forward, though, if there's something that you need, we also can arrange for stuff that you haven't bought yet, but you still need. Sometimes by doing it for having OPI do it, sometimes for you doing it and providing the
software that comes out of the firewall is kind of like
Thank you. If you're not talking, could you please mute yourself? Thank you. Another one is the allocation based on current enrollment?
Yes.
Do you set up the e-grant account under your name if homeschool?
Yes.
We'll address that. Yep.
Thank you. Another great question is, will these funds be taxed?
I have to say, I haven't hit that question.
I
My
know.
belief is that these funds will not be taxed, but I'm writing myself a note to make absolutely sure that's correct.
Boy, that'd be crazy. Tax dollars being taxed again. Something creative that the government might do. Okay, will it cover art supplies?
Yes.
Okay. It says, I'm confused about these funds not being available unless you were homeschooling prior to 2020. Is that correct?
Yes, as I read the guidance that came from the Department of Education, it's for homeschools that were in operation at the time that the national emergency was declared, which was March 13th of last year.
In clarification for that, Ken, that also means for the both deployments of the EANS dollars or just for the first one?
Since I haven't seen the guidance on the second one yet from the Department of Education, I don't know for sure on the second one.
Thank you. So we need to be patient with that question.
Right.
And quite possibly the second deployment then would be for anyone, regardless of the date. Another one, can you send over yes, the recording will go to anyone who is attaining to this meeting at this point. We always do a reflection afterwards. And so we'll be sending that recording to you. The amounts applied for, but still the amounts applied for need be related to COVID issues. So in other words, any of the learning needs need to be related to the remediation of the virus. Is that correct, Ken?
Right. Again, it's prepare for, prevent, or respond to. And you have to have some justification in that way.
Mm-hmm. And another question on the dates. So they started remote learning when school closed last March, but will be homeschooling for this incoming school year of 21-22. Will they qualify for that funding then?
No, I don't believe so. That again, you had to have been registered for homeschooling back at that time.
But that again is for the first deployment, correct? Not
Yes.
necessarily for the second deployment. All right. Can the funds be paid for tutoring?
So yes, and again, I think the question is how's it related to the COVID virus, providing that justification.
And here's the question that comes up about the faith-based materials, math, science, and history, language, arts, etc. So would that still fall under the faith-based because of the company?
So again, this is a difficult one because again, I think I've hit this a couple of times in the first questions about equitable share for the first set of CARES Act things. And usually what I've done is gone back to the Title I people who've done this for a lot longer than me and discuss it with them. And on this kind of thing, again, I would say that we would work with you to try and figure out, could we pay for part of it? Could we do something like that? Because it certainly is meant for education. There's just a prohibition on paying for religious instruction. Okay.
Thank you, Ken. Are field trips covered?
So to the extent that the field trip is an educational action and that it's somehow being caused by COVID, I would say yes.
And there was a question that says if it is a response to COVID and the virus, there's just a question on the timing. So, if we talk about that timing with the first deployment of the money, it was contained to March 13 of 2020. But there is a second round of funding that we do not have guidance yet to know that where that start date might be. So please be patient with us as we try to be patient with the federal government in their guidance. So let me continue here. It says homeschool year run July to June was a question. I don't know if there's a timing on when the school starts or ends, Ken?
Right. There's nothing related to the school year in the timing of the grant or the expenditures that can be paid for.
Could this be used to pay for substitutes while the staff was in quarantine?
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't know. I think I've reached as much as we have. Does anyone have any further questions out there? Please raise your hand. Thank you, or pop in.
Sorry, thank you so much. Okay, I just would like some clarification in that question that we put on there. What we're looking at is supposed to be something that is a response to COVID. So if I'm very confused about being a response to COVID, but having to have started before COVID happened. So my kids, while I come from both of those sides. I have one that was always homeschooled, not always, but for the last few years, and two that started in the 2020-2021 year because of COVID, but that wouldn't have been established before March 13th because COVID wasn't a thing. So I'm looking for, and I think other people are too, the clarification of if this is in response to COVID, it would have to be for a homeschool that was established after March 13th. Wouldn't that be correct?
I understand both the confusion and frustration with this. And I would say that, again, the way that the department has structured this guidance is in thinking about private schools as opposed to homeschoolers. And if in a private school that was in existence before March 13th that gained enrollment because of COVID, actually doesn't even matter if it was COVID, they would qualify for the grant based upon being in existence on March 13th. And they would get funded by current enrollment, not what enrollment was before the pandemic started. So I'm extending that to say that for a homeschool parent that has a child in homeschool and then has more children convert to homeschool, as long as they were doing the first homeschooling before March 13th, that qualifies you for the grant. And the amount of money you're eligible for is based on what we would call current enrollment, or the number of kids that you currently have in homeschool.
Thank
That
you.
is perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience with that. And again, there are 2 rounds of funding, and we don't know the guidance coming. The federal government hasn't even given us a table on the correct allocation numbers yet. So thank you for being patient with us as we're trying to be patient with the federal government. Okay, and we will, when we get more information, it will be on our webpage. And yes, we will have another discussion next Thursday because the application has been opened. It opened yesterday. And with that, Jay, let's go ahead and move right into yours if you'd like to share your screen and show us what we've got. Thank you.
Let me unmute here. Can everybody see that okay? They can see the main OPI page again? Good, okay. And so for the e-grants specifics, you'll go to the exact same place where you go just to get the general EANS information, okay? Down under here, oops, sorry, under the application updates, this has a link to the actual e-grant system itself, which I'll use that here. But I also want to mention that this Zoom links down here, if you come in here and you look at our webpage, we're going to try to post days where we have all day live support. And so what this Zoom meeting is we have Mindy Askelson. She's one of my systems analysts, and she's one of the ones that helped create the application and is going to be available to help out throughout this process. We understand that, this is a new system for everybody. We want to try to make sure that we have a solid system of support. And so as of right now, we're going to try to do the Zoom meetings. If at any time during the process, anybody has questions, we'll make sure you guys have Mindy's contact information and you can reach out to her directly. But if anybody has questions, again, like starting today, she is available, okay? So to get to the e-grant system, it's gonna be a couple things we have to do, but you click on this e-grant system tab. And we got a new link down here. Oops, sorry, this thing's jumping really bad on me. That has a private non-public schools new user account instructions. Okay, and so to get to the application, one of the first things we have to do is we need to set all the individual schools up with their own e-grants user account. And if you click on that, it'll bring up a document that will do a couple things here. It'll give you, again, the link to the e-grants primary page, which when you click on that will look just like this. And this is the screen where you'll go in and enter a username and password once we get you an account actually established. But to start the process in getting an account established, you're going to go and click on this new user tab or link down here. You can see it down here as well. It'll pop up another window. And there's going to be some language in here that unfortunately we can't change some of it because our grants management system is kind of designed really for the public schools. And so this is a new process for us. And so we're using kind of some of the back end system functionality in order to accommodate the new relationship that we have with you guys. And so some of these things in here, you say legal entity, really what we mean by that is the school in itself, okay? And so when you come to that first new user tab, there's gonna be an add new legal entity option, and we'll need you guys to select that. Once you click on that, it's gonna bring up basically kind of a contact information. It's gonna ask you for the legal entity name, which is your school name. It'll ask for the address, phone number. And web sites, that's not necessary. Some of our schools do like to put that in there. And then we have what's called the contact information for the authorized representative. And the authorized rep is just the person, whether it's the private school or at the home school, the person that's going to be getting into the application, filling out the application itself, and then submitting requests for services or equipment or anything that you guys want to get, whether it's reimbursed for, or if it's something that OPI is going to purchase on your behalf. Okay, you guys will put in your email. Now, it's critical that you guys really double check this because that's going to be the address that we use to send you your temporary password for establishing your actual account. And it's also going to be the email that you'll use to log into the system in itself. Okay.
So Jay, let's stop right here. There was a question that came up in the chat box, and I believe it had to do with the legal entity. What would they like if they're homeschooled for school name? should we use our first or our last name or put homeschool?
So the name that we've had and that we've usually had is that a lot of the homeschools will have, usually I think it's like the last name. So it's Phillips Homeschool. And it's usually the name that you've used to register with the county is the one that we would suggest that you put in there. Because the information that we have in our databases that we get from the counties is whatever you have submitted with them as that name, okay? And so if you're not sure about that, feel free to contact us because we have that data on hand. And so we can give you that. And again, if you put that in there and it needs to be adjusted later, that's something that we can also adjust itself, okay?
Are there any questions at this point?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and so again, real quick, this is just kind of just shows, you know, a filled out portion of it. Once you've completed everything, you're just going to hit the submit to OPI button. And once you do that, what happens is then OPI gets an email and we get it in it. What it does, it helps us to initiate the actual creation of an account. And once our security officer has established an account, you'll get an email that'll have your username and also your password, okay? And once you get that, so I got to switch screens here real quick. Okay. And so one note, please, this is just our test system because we're not logging into our live, but I just want to be able to show you kind of the process of what it would look like. You won't see this. This is a test. It'll be just that general eGrants page that I had showed you before. So to log in again, all you need to do is enter in your actual username. And so I'm going to use a test account. And then enter in your password. And once you've got that, you can just hit the login. Okay. Oops. As long as you get it right. Hold on here. Sorry, guys.
So just to reiterate, this may look really heavy government. We've never had the conversation with non-public before, and we're really attempting to be non-government and be very user-friendly. If there's any questions at all, it's Mindy, it's Jay, it's Ken, it's Elsie that you call, it's people that you call, so we can help you walk through. And we want to make sure that it has a very easy framework for you, as well as for us in the reporting, because we're held accountable for these dollars as well, but we don't want to have too many strings attached. When you ask for verification, we want to say yes to you so you can have these dollars to spend for the continuity of learning.
Okay, so then once you actually log in, you can have a couple things here that you guys won't really be concerned about. The main thing you'll be concerned about is this eGrants Access Select down here. And again, understanding that this is a new application for everybody. Again, that's why if you're going in your first time logging in, you know, we'll work with you. You can either call us, we can walk you through as a one-on-one basis, or again, if we have a Zoom that's available, please utilize that resource. We'll do that. But once you click on this eGrants Select Access, it'll come up with the page here, and there's going to be some other ones in here that really don't apply. But what you will see is that once the security officer has associated you with the EANS application, it's going to pop up here. You'll see it under this formula grant. There's what they call it, there'll be a create button. If you click on that, that's what's going to actually initiate the actual app, start the application process itself. Give me 1 second here. Okay. So one of the first things you'll notice is that when you log in here, you're going to see your actual name up here. It'll tell you about the grant in itself. You know, we'll have a school year up here for you. There's going to be some actual tabs. So the first tab you guys are going to see is called the applicant information. And this is the one that we're going to use that if you come in here, we'll have you identify whether you're a private or homeschool. Again, we'll have you put in whoever is the one that was basically the authorized representative when you actually created the user account itself. We'll get your contact information and again, your email. And then also we have here some enrollment data. Part of this information, we're actually going to pre-populate because we have the information for all the schools that have registered with the counties. If you're a brand new homeschool, then again, as long as it was prior to March 13th of 2020, then these will actually be zeros and we can work with you, or you can enter in those amounts. And then we also have you identify what school district you're in. Now, some of this, you know, again, OPI is gonna utilize this for initially for the calculation of the distributions. And so if there's questions on any of these, again, these actually do have a drop down box. And so you can put that in there. If you're not sure about your actual district, again, you can contact OPI and we can help provide what district you're in for you. Okay. As you scroll down, we also put in here, you know, as Ken had stated, there's, you know, specific things that are allowable for reimbursement or just actual expenditures that are incurred related to the COVID. You know, and here you can see like the supplies to sanitize, disinfect, clean school facilities, you know, of course, PPE, other things like physical barriers to facilitate social distancing. One of the big ones you guys have asked about is like educational technology, which is your laptops, iPads, and whatnot. And then there was also that piece where Ken had talked about that there are certain things that OPI that we can't reimburse you directly for. And so, but those are things that we can actually purchase, you know, directly for you. Now, a lot of the home schools, I know you guys probably aren't going to be looking to do like ventilation systems, but, you know, things of like, you know, staff training or professional development, you know, for the use of PPE and things like that, you know, that might be more directed towards the private schools. So again, if in this process you have questions in regards to, you know, what is an actual reimbursable item, you know, if it's something that you are looking to get reimbursed or want to, you know, purchase in the future or have OPI purchase for you, again, I would use the technical assistance of our staff to help answer those questions as you're going through this process. Okay. And again, like I know there's quite a few homeschools out there, but, you know, if you got call, I have several staff available. Like Elsie said, all of us are here to provide you support. And so our hopes is that if we need to walk you guys through this one-on-one, like we're happy to try to do that. Okay. And we also talked about some of the things in regards to that we were going to ask you to attest to. And so some of that based on the regulations is that the applicant has to certify that, you know, the school requesting service or assistance is actually a nonprofit school. The requesting service or assistance is accredited, licensed, or otherwise approved to operate in accordance with state law. You know, again, here's that being operated prior to March 13th, 2020. And then one of the things that for the private schools is that during the pandemic, you know, there were these paycheck protection program plans that were available as part of the CARES funding. And so if in fact you did participate in that, then you're going to want to talk to us because it actually kind of disqualifies you from participating in this portion of the funding. So because they made a provision that money in itself could not be used in correlation with the actual EANS funds itself. Okay. And so the application one, it's really pretty easy to get. A lot of it's really simple. You know, we do also have on here like a click for instructions tab. If you click on that, it will bring up, you know, additional information of, you know, how to fill out the application, any other requirements that might be part of it. Sorry, I got to move this here.
So Jay, there was a question, and the question had to deal with once we submit as a new user to gain access, when should we expect login information?
So it should be no more. We're looking for 24 to 48 hour turnaround. Part of it was we weren't, and the reason why I say that is it should be quicker than that, but just not really knowing offhand how many we're actually going to get initially. I think today, when I checked before we came to the meeting, we've only had about 12 of those. And so the expectation is hopefully you guys will start getting those by tomorrow morning. Okay. But as we get them in, we'll try to process them, you know, so you guys can start getting into the system itself.
Thank you. Meredith, you have your hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It helps all of us out so much. My question is, we are a nonprofit private school in Bozeman for students with disabilities, and we received the first round of PPP, but not the second. It was my understanding as long as we didn't participate in the second round, we could apply for the EANS. Could you clarify that for me?
I think it applies to the second round, but that's a good question. And let me find out, and we'll post that out.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Any other further questions? Clarifications?
And so real quick before we go, let me try to make sure I hit these other ones these are kind of the other important tabs. This allocations tab, again, this is a large amount because my staff is used to large grants. And so, but what you see in this allocations tab is, like Ken had said, we'll do a final, we're gonna do an initial load. And so for that, each one of those students, you'll have that base amount of the $550. And so again, if you have one student, when you come in here, your allocation is gonna be $550, okay? And again, that'll be multiplied based on the amount that you have. Now, you know, as Ken said, after June 1st, when we actually do the final submission close date, and then we calculate based on that participation, you know, whether it's that $1,100 or that amount goes up because we have less participation than we initially factored, then you'll also have, you know, a supplemental amount that will be loaded in here that will be reflected in your applications. Okay, so you're actually going to have two pots of money that you'll actually have. You can budget for that first 550 plus, again, depending on enrollment, and then that supplemental, what I'll call it, that will come after June 1st. So looking at the allocation, we have what's called the budget pages. Okay, and so within the way that the funding works is we've broken it out into specific categories. I'll call them spending categories. And so if you click on any of these links that you ever see in the eGrants system that are blue, it's a resource that you can use to bring up to kind of help give you more information. And so in these spending categories, we call them 300, there's professional and technical services, which would cover tutors, online courses, technical assistance for educational hardware and software. There's a computer, textbook, and curriculum and supplies. You know, I heard a lot of questions today about, you know, curriculum and also computers. And so if you're looking to do something to get reimbursed for something you've purchased, something that you'd like OPI to get for you, or, you know, down the road you want to purchase, then we would ask you to put it in these specific categories in itself. Okay. Then there is also what we call a use of funds. And this is just a little bit more detail in that if you did buy like a computer, textbook, or curriculum, you know, we'll ask that you identify specifically what that was for. You know, if it's, you know, technology for educational technology, you know, for use by teachers, you know, and administrators, or this would be for you homeschoolers, it'd be for your, you know, parents or for the kids. Okay. Some of the other ones you could use, like home internet for students. If you guys didn't have adequate internet and you did provide that service, you know, that from the internet provider, then those are things that are reimbursable as well. And so this page again is just here to help you kind of determine like the buckets of the funding of where you actually spent the money. Now, again, understanding that this is something that typically I think that you would request from the public schools. And so us asking you to kind of provide a little bit more detail, I know it could be a little daunting. And again, I just want to give everybody the assurance that we're here to help you kind of make those determinations if you're not quite sure. Okay.
Let me step in for just 1 second, if I could. Please understand that one of the responsibilities of the OPI is to report to the Department of Education how we spend this money. And the department has established these categories that you saw before in terms of they want to understand how much is spent in each of these categories. So this isn't kind of arbitrary or trying to make things difficult for you. This is also the way that we'll fulfill the requirement for reporting. So we won't come and ask you separately, give us a report on how you spent the money. We'll have it already. Okay.
Good point, Ken. Thank you for that. Yep. And so, you know, as you guys are going in here, if you're doing your budget in each one of these categories, my apologies, this is a green screen, but that's how we know it's our test site. The actual site doesn't have that. So if you were to click on your spending category, like we talked about the different buckets, and you were to, you know, purchase, you know, computers, again, I'm sorry, this purpose category is just a default to what we call non-public. And again, that's kind of more for our reporting. And the use of the funds, again, is that final piece where we're asking you just to get a little bit more descriptive as to the different types of what you're using it for. And so again, if it was just, you know, you purchase iPads, you know, for technology for use in order to, you know, have the kids use the curriculum at the homeschool or the private, then that's what it's for. Description fields is really just something in general that you could give us that what it was actually purchased, or if you had anything else you want to give us, it's there for you. And then the actual amount that was expended. Now I'm going to put just like $1,000 in here. Let's see here. Actually, I'm going to do 100,000 because otherwise you have to save it. But what we have you do is for each one of those pieces in those buckets, as for that $550, if you spend it or the amount that you have budgeted or allocated, you would break each one of those into the individual pieces until you've actually got to where you've budgeted all of the funding to the total amount of your allocation. So down here, once you kind of got that, you can hit the save page and you'll see down here that the total budget amount above is 100,000. So the total budget is 100,000. So anything that was remaining here is 0. Okay. So and the one thing about this is that part of the things, and this is another requirement, like Kenneth said, is this second tab here that talks about computer textbook and curriculum supplies. One of the requirements is that if items, computer or a curriculum is actually purchased, that when OPI reimburses you, that we actually have to take ownership of that equipment. And so one of the things we're going to ask of you is that if you did get like an iPad, and you're submitting a receipt and we're going to reimburse you for that, then we need to give us a little bit of this information again for our tracking, and so we can meet the federal requirements. And in this case, you had like, if you're going to be something that needs to be purchased, you know, you want to have us actually do that, or it's something you're going to purchase down the road, you can put that in there. Or again, if it's something you're looking for reimbursement, you can put the previously purchased in there. And then we'll ask you to give us just the identifier, the quantity. In this case, this is a very expensive laptop or iPad, it's $100,000. And then we'll hit that save page. And then that's registered. You'll see here how much you budget in that category. Make sure your unit cost, the total amount of what you've got in here, ties. And if you come in here, the system does have quality checks. And so in the event that the amount that we have budgeted here in that spending category doesn't tie to what you've put in here, you will get a red error message up here and just kind of prompting you, hey, you need to go back and just make sure you enter in the additional information. Okay. The equipment over 5,000, this is more for capital expenditure. We'll call capital expenditures. I don't think that we'll have a lot of those that are going to get more than 5,000, or maybe some of you private schools might. But if you come across that and you have questions today, I don't have the time to go through it, but give us a call and we'll walk you through that. Okay.
So Jay, just let me stop for a second. There was a question because you had made the comment. So does this mean if we buy a computer that the state actually does own it? And if that means that would something need to be returned at the end of the year?
So you are correct that in fact that at the time of when we are distributing those funds to you, the state does in fact own it. Now, with that said, you know, there's certain federal regulations about, you know, recovery of items purchased with federal dollars. But looking at the iPads and the cost, or like a laptop, you know, at the end of the grant, our intention is not to come and try to recollect it back from you. But in order for us to meet federal regulations, that on our side, that we have a system of inventory, we are going to ask you to put that information in there for us. Okay.
Did that clarify? So we're not going to be knocking on your door and seeking laptops, computers, and things like that. But to reiterate what Ken had said, to fulfill our requirement to even get the dollars from the feds, there has to be some notification. And that's what he's doing here with a notification. We've been past an hour, Jay. Can we, I know everyone's time is precious, and there's going to be so much more that's going to be coming from us. And again, I don't want this to be so much of a barrier or a hurdle. I would like this to be a gate of a relationship that we have. So we're here to help. We're here to get you any questions answered at this point. So I do have Meredith. Do you have another question? I see a hand raised.
Oh, no, I do not. Sorry.
Okay.
It is real quick. So it is real quick, Elsie. So once you've done those, that's actually it. The application is done, and all you have to do is go into the actual submit. And so again, we've tried to simplify it as much as possible. You know, as we get further down the road and we get in June, and there's going to be that second distribution, there is this amendment portion of it, but we'll cover that in June, and we'll walk everybody, have another one of these and walk everybody through that process as well. So.
Thank you, Jay. Another question that came in. Is there a date for the second round for those who started homeschooling after March 2020? Can I fill out the application before it comes out, or do I need to wait?
So when you fill out an application for the first round of EANS funding, one of the things that you will certify is that you were in existence before March 13th. We don't know what the second round is going to say.
Sure.
So I would say to you that yes, you should wait until we see exactly what that second round of funding says about eligibility.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, and part of that, again, like the caveat, as Ken said, is it depending on if the dates are the same or if they're different. You know, if they come out and they have the same dates, we'll do kind of on that second round what they call a consolidated application, which means we can load that money into your initial application. So then you wouldn't have to do a brand new one other than doing some budget pages. But if they come back and there's some different dates, then we may have to have a secondary application for that because there'll be different requirements.
Thank you. Another question has to do with making sure that we're not going to come knocking on their door for laptops. So we'll make sure that that gets followed through. And another one said, will there be an annual follow-up or inventory on items that are purchased? In other words, what will we be doing?
So go ahead, Ken.
So unless we receive something from the Department of Education that asks us to do that, I can't imagine that we would go out and do a general follow-up on inventory.
Yeah.
It would, the only other time we would do it, I guess, might be if we had someone who reported that something was being misused or something like that. But it's hard to imagine a case where we would want to go out and actually do an inventory of what you bought.
Right.
The one addition to that I want to add is that for the private schools, you know, if they do have a larger pot of money and they do exceed that $5,000 threshold, there will be some different requirements as for, you know, collecting anything or actually accounting for it. And so some of that we'll deal with them individually on a one-on-one basis, but it's not, but we're talking again here, the smaller supplies and equipment.
Well, this has been a very great call, and we are here. I mean, we are here, and even though you may see 3 faces on the screen here in blue, there are many behind that can help serve you. This is all new for our agency, but again, I'll reiterate like what I said in the beginning. We're here to serve. We're here to make it very easy, and it's all about children and learning. So we are going to do another follow-up, and there will be a reflections back to you from this email. So this recording will go back to you immediately. Give us at least 24 hours in that immediacy. And then we'll go ahead and we'll get that invite to you for next Thursday at the same time at 1 o'clock. And hopefully you have had some indication and opportunity to get on the website and look around. If you can help us better serve, let us know. Let us know what it is that we can do better with an application, that we can do better in any framework so that it does become a gate and not a barrier by any means. So with that, I wish you all the best. We'll get more information out to you. If someone isn't here that needs to be, please invite them. If we can do better, please share. So with that, please stay well. Take care of your families and your children, and blessings to you. Stay well. Thank you.